everyone, and welcome to the review. My name's Janae, and I'd like to welcome you to the first video of 12 that we're going to be doing from August 14th to October 30th. I do encourage you to go down to the description and read the rules of this giveaway, as well as the disclosure for this channel. So, by saying that, let's head on over to that video. Today's video theme is phobias. That's right, we're going to talk about phobias. So, your main question, let me know what your main phobia, what scares you the most? What is my phobia? Well, I'll tell you. My phobia is I have a fear of flying. That's right. So I'm going to give you a couple of stories that are funny now when I look at it, but weren't quite as funny at the time that it was happening. When I was little, my father used to take us to Boeing Field, which was just outside of the city of Seattle, and we would watch the new planes basically going on a test run. It was really fun to watch. Even as a child, I always liked to watch planes take off and land. But to be honest with you, I don't want to be in them. The thought of me being in a tin can up in the air just doesn't thrill me at all. Nope, nope, nope. I know this is going to sound funny, but I'm an avid watcher of Mayday. So that makes my fear of flying even worse. So when I know I'm going to go on a trip and I have to fly, usually the anxiety of that flight starts to take effect about a week before the flight. But to me, to someone that has a fear of flying, this was scary. So the first story I'm going to tell you is about a flight I took out from Seattle to Portland, Oregon. It's a small flight, so basically it takes about 45 minutes. Not a very long flight. Now, for me, having a fear of flying, 45 minutes is long enough. So, the first thing I found out, and I found out this information the day of the flight. This wasn't a regular commercial airlines, meaning that the plane was a small plane. It wasn't a very big plane. And it also was a turboprop. So when I found out that it was a small commuter plane, I thought, oh, that's not going to be good. But, you know, there's always a first to something. The next thing I realized is that we actually had to walk from the terminal to the plane and board that way. So we didn't have to go down that long tunnel thing. I don't know what it's actually called or the technical term for it, but we actually had to walk out of the terminal and walk to the plane and go up the stairs, and yeah. So I thought, okay, this is new. Never done this before, but hey, I'm okay with it. As long as the plane is functional, I'm happy. So I boarded the plane, and my seat was right next to the wing where the engine was. And I have to say, yes, it was loud, but again, not something that I normally would have a lot of anxiety over. My anxiety is the actual taking off and landing. That's the gray area for me. And in all honesty, I should, before I get on a flight, should be taking a sedative or a tranquilizer, something to calm me down, because I get so tense and so hyper before getting on a flight, and that's just my way of coping with that fear. It's like having like 4 or 5 cups of espresso. I'm like shaking. Anyway, and I've been like this since I was little. So we get ready to get on the flight. We get on the flight. I'm sitting down, and the flight was fairly packed. As I said before, I didn't realize that, there it goes. I didn't realize that the majority of the passengers were employees going to their main hub, which was in Portland, Oregon. I learned that like 20 minutes into the flight, and there's a reason behind that. So because the plane is small, there's a captain, there's a co-captain or first officer, and then there's only one stewardess or a steward. Now the stewardess was speaking to the majority of the employees that were heading home, and the rest of us were just, we were getting ourselves ready for the flight and so on. And the captain comes on and he informs everyone that the flight was on schedule and that the weather was perfect. There shouldn't be any turbulence. So basically he said that there was a bit of a tailwind, so we actually might get to our destination sooner than later because the tailwind will help push the plane in the direction that you're going. So that was a good thing too. I thought, oh good, that means that we're not going to be up here too long. So anyway, the stewardess got everything ready. She strapped herself in, and in a plane like this, because it's small, they sit in a jump seat. So their seat belts are like shoulder seat belts. They come from the front around the shoulders, and then they connect it around the waist area. So she basically sat down, got her seat belts on. We were taxiing out to the runway, and like I said, everything was going really well. Nothing to get overly concerned about. Now, the captain came on and informed us that we did have clearance to take off. So as soon as that plane turned around and was straightened out on the runway, the plane started, picking up speed, and we started to take off. Now, this was the scary part. Now remember, I have anxiety. As the plane started to bring the nose up and the wheels started to lift up off the ground, all of a sudden there was like a fireball coming through the cabin. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, get me out of here. I thought we were going to die. I really did. I had no clue what was going on. There was a gentleman and a woman sitting behind me who turned out to be a pilot and a stewardess, and the pilot was actually sitting directly behind me. And as this was going on and I'm thinking we're going to die, the pilot behind me was saying, we're melting, we're melting. Oh my God. I would literally, if I could have screamed, I would have, but I thought, no, don't do it yet. So what ultimately happened is the stewardess, I've never seen someone move so fast in my entire life. She whipped those shoulder seatbelts off, got up and started pushing buttons. Well, within a matter of, I think, maybe a minute and a half, even though it felt like an eternity, finally the cabin started to cool down. And my anxiety level went from, 20 to about 10 at that point. I was like, oh, good, it's cooling down. Oh, my God. Anyway, basically what happened was they didn't properly pressurize the cabin before taking off, and that is the reason why we felt this fireball come through the cabin. So at that point, once everything settled down and it started cooling off, that's when I realized that the majority of the passengers on that flight were employees of that airline. I was okay after that. In fact, the stewardess that was sitting behind me recognized that I was a little anxious, and she reassured me that, everything's going to be fine. It's a simple fix, no big deal. Plane's going to be normal. And I'm sitting there going, lady, I don't know who you are, and I really don't care, and I just want off this plane. That's all I can think of is get me off. So that was my experience with a turboprop. So your bonus question is, what your favorite way of traveling long distance? Is it car, plane, or train? So this last story I'm going to tell you. This one I think takes the cake, because I don't think I've ever been so paranoid in my entire life. Now, just to let you know, my husband is a retired pilot. He used to fly up north in northern Canada as a bush pilot. So he knows just about everything that's going on with the plane or when you're taking off, up in the air, and descending. And he knows that I have a fear of flying, and on most accounts, he doesn't, tease me or do anything, out of the ordinary. But he has this habit of telling me what's going on. And I usually tell him, you know what, I don't want to know. I'd rather not know, so don't tell me. But he still does it anyway. So we decided that we were going to fly to Mexico, and this was the first time that we actually went to Mexico on holidays. So our flight was to leave at 9 o'clock in the morning. They got us all on the plane probably about 10 after 8, and as the plane was taxiing over to the side of the airport where they do their de-icing, the captain comes on. No, it wasn't the captain. Sorry, it was the first officer comes on. Now, this was a little weird. This is how it was said. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bob, and sitting next to me is Steve. We are your flight crew. And then he started naming the stewardess because they were all women. We're just letting you know that this flight is approximately 4 hours and 35 minutes, and the weather over in Puerto Vallarta is 30 Celsius. So sit back and enjoy your flight. Both me and my husband just kind of looked at each other like, wow, was that informal or what? Because I've never ever been on a flight where the first officer or even the captain just said, yeah, my name is Bob and sitting next to me is Steve. I'm like, oh, okay. So my husband just thought, that was a little odd. And then he bent over to me and he says, you know what? That guy sounded like a teenager. I'm like, okay, that isn't a smart thing to tell somebody that has anxiety and being in a tin can. I was like, no, I don't want to know. But yeah, he repeated it. He goes, yeah, I swear that sounded like a teenager. I'm like, shut up. So the plane sat there for about 5 minutes, and then they came over and sprayed the goo on the wings and on the tail. I call it goo because that's what it looks like. So at that point, I'm trying to convince myself it's going to be okay. Just ignore him. He's just trying to get under your skin. Don't worry about it. So they get the goo on, and the plane starts to move again. Now we're taxiing towards the runway. Now, we get to a certain point on the runway where you start turning and there's a little bit of a stretch there, and then you turn again and there's your runway, right? Well, we did our first turn and we proceeded to go forward, and I am not kidding you. Oh my God. That plane, if it could have stopped on a dime, it tried, at least. Let's put it that way. It tried. That plane literally came to a halt, bounced 3 times, and I'm not kidding you. It was like boom, boom, boom. And have you ever seen those commercials, with the crash car dummies? And the crash car dummy goes flying forward? Yeah, just imagine about 100 people doing that. We all flung forward. Thank God we had seatbelts on. And there was I think somebody behind me, probably about 3 rows behind me, that said, well, great, that's a wonderful way to start a flight. And I'm sitting there going, get me out of here. I don't want to be in this. So I'm sitting by the window and I'm looking out the window and I see this bright yellow line. Now, we were in row 8, and this bright yellow line was right at row 5. So that pretty much tells you that the front of the plane, or at least the cockpit area, and the toilet and where they keep the food and stuff, was over that line, right? So I'm looking at this line thinking, I wonder what that is. My husband looks out the window and he goes, oh, that's nice. And I looked at him like, do I really want to know this? So, of course, I asked, I go, what do you mean, that's nice? He goes, see that yellow line there? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, that line tells the pilots that they're approaching the runway. I'm like, okay, and so you're telling me that the front of the plane is in the runway? He goes, yep. I'm like, why would they stop like that? He says, well, basically because they didn't have approval to go to the runway. They weren't paying attention. Nice. I'm sitting there going, okay, this is not a flight I want to be on. So I said, well, why would they? Okay, I said, I just need to know, because at this point I was already starting to freak out. I said, so let's say that they did what they did, obviously, and what would happen if they weren't given that that clearance to cross that? And he says, basically the reason why they didn't get the clearance is most likely a plane is on approach to land. I said, okay, and so let's say that said plane is landing and our plane is, where it is. He goes, well, there's a big possibility that, the plane that's landing is going to clip the front of our plane and, there you go. I'm like, oh my God, get me off. Anyway, it didn't happen. I mean, we were there probably in that position for about 5 minutes and nothing happened. I mean, obviously, because I'm still here, but I was scared to death. And then my husband said to me, he goes, well, those pilots are definitely going to get fined for that. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, because they didn't have clearance and they crossed the line, they will get fined for crossing the line. I thought, oh, Jesus. I was like, I just kept my eyes closed and I just kept telling myself, you know what, it's going to be okay. Don't panic. So that's not the end of the story. There's more to this story. So we finally got the clearance to get on the runway and take off. Now that was pretty uneventful. Everything worked out really well. Takeoff was nice and smooth. And the remaining of the flight was nice and smooth. There wasn't any turbulence that I can remember. And, it went really well. Until we started to approach the Puerto Vallarta airport. That's when my husband got really quiet. Now, before we actually approached the runway, but we were actually descending, my husband was basically giving me the lowdown on the landing checklist. He does this to me all the time. He goes, gear down. Then he'll go, flaps this, this. I'm like, I don't want to know. Just leave me alone. So he's proceeding to tell me what's going on with the plane as we are descending. Then all of a sudden he got really quiet. Now we're pretty close to the ground at this point, and he was really quiet, and that made me a little bit more nervous because I thought normally he's yapping away about what's going on with the plane. And the next thing that happened was we ended up landing, and it wasn't a smooth landing. It was hard. It was like, boom. And as we are propelling forward on this runway, you could hear this loud, screeching, ear-piercing sound. I mean, it was loud. And I thought to myself, okay, this isn't normal. Now, it wasn't the sound of the reverse thrusters, because that's like a loud roar. This was a screeching sound, like something was in pain. So my husband didn't say a word. And by the time, and it just seemed like it took forever for that plane to slow down. You did eventually hear the reverse thrusters kick in, but it just seemed like it took forever for that to happen. So anyway, we got to the terminal and we got off the plane, and I looked at my husband and I said, okay, something wasn't right there, and you normally are yapping all the way down, including during the landing. I said, so why all of a sudden did you get quiet? And he looked at me and he goes, you know what, I've never been scared in my entire life until that point. And I said, what? And he goes, we were coming in way too fast. I'm like, oh, really? He goes, oh yeah. I'm like, that's not good. And thank God he didn't say anything to me when it was happening. And he says, you heard that loud screeching noise? And I'm like, yeah, but I knew that was not right. And he goes, no, it wasn't right. Basically what happened was they landed the plane before even the wheels touched the ground. They already had the brakes applied. He says, you don't land with the brakes on. He goes, so that was that screeching sound. So they basically were lucky the plane didn't flip. I thought, that's nice. I'm sitting there thinking, I don't think I want to go home now. I think we're here forever. And then he said, he counted, I believe he said it was like 13 or 14 seconds before the reverse thrusters came on. And he said the way they landed that plane was backwards. They should have landed, touched down, put the reverse thrusters on immediately, gave it about 13, 14 seconds, and then applied the brakes, not the other way around. He said, so whoever landed that plane did it backwards. That's nice to know. Oh my gosh. He was not a happy camper. In fact, he told me, he says, we are not taking that airline again. He says, that was crazy. So, yeah. I am so glad that he did not say anything to me as it was happening, because I literally probably would have started screaming, get me out of here. So that's my experiences with some of the flights that I've been on. So I hope you enjoyed the 2 stories that I shared with you tonight. Just a reminder to go down to the description below and take a look at the rules of the giveaway. Also, don't forget to take a look at the disclosure of the channel. I would greatly appreciate that. So I gave you 2 questions during the video. 1, what is your phobia? What scares you the most? 2, which way do you prefer to travel? Car, train, or plane? And your 3rd bonus question, Have you ever experienced a strange event while you were traveling? Don't forget to go down below in the comments and leave me your answers. I would love to hear your comments and your stories. So by saying that, I'm going to go ahead and bid you adieu. So if you like the video, give it that thumbs up. I greatly appreciate it. And if you didn't like the video, it's okay. Totally understand. But if you can go down in the comments below and let me know what you didn't like about the video, I would greatly appreciate that. That way, it helps me improve my upcoming videos in the future. Also, if you're new to the channel and you like what you see and you like what you heard, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I would love to have you join the family. Also, don't forget to hit the bell. The bell will indicate when I've uploaded my next video. So by saying that, if this is morning for you, have a very pleasant morning. If this is afternoon for you, have an excellent rest of your afternoon. And if this is evening for you, have a very restful evening. Again, my name's Janae, and thank you for joining me tonight on the review. We'll talk again real soon.